Okay, all set. You guys are live.
Thank you, Ryan. Welcome everyone to the May 20, what's today's date?
28th.
28th, thank you. Meeting of the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Committee. This meeting is being recorded for future television on WHCA local cable. And we have all in attendance, along with three guests in the gallery: Lisa Green, Chief Greno, and Ernie Sandlin.
I think we're missing Josh.
Josh isn't here.
Oh yeah, where's Josh?
He's on vacation, so he may not pop in tonight.
Okay, I apologize. So we're missing member Josh McNeil. Sorry, I'm working on one screen here, and it's not there we go. So that's Chairman's report. The Finance Committee has commenced with their vote for recommendations on both the Article 2 and the draft warrant articles. Essentially, there's a handful of line items that have not been up for vote on the there's a few handful of items on the Article 2 that have not been voted, and a handful of items on the warrant article that have not been voted by the FinCom. FinCom has recommended changes to the funding sources of a few items. It's essentially their approach to try to expend all monies out of the expense reserve accounts, motor vehicle fine account, and the ambulance account that are up for being dissolved via town meeting. So in anticipation of that, they think that the best approach is try to utilize those funds, because if you don't utilize those funds, essentially the accounts are dissolved, the monies drop to the general budget for the following year. So essentially try to use that money this year instead of next year is the short answer. What I'm trying to say there. So that's it for the Finance Committee. Frank, do you have anything in regards to the town administrator?
Well, the Board of Selectmen will be meeting Monday to vote the warrant in preparation for what we hope will be a town meeting on June 22nd. The plan, at least, is to hold a meeting at the high school. As of this moment, the legislation filed almost 4 weeks ago still has not been approved by the governor. And that legislation is necessary for us to hold a town meeting beyond the geographic boundaries of the town. And the high school, of course, is entirely in Hanson. So without that vote, we cannot use the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School for a meeting place. I am hoping that that's going to happen in the next day or two. I spoke to the governor's office today about midday about it. It wasn't on the governor's desk, and it wasn't on the list of things that his secretary had, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not up there tomorrow. Everything we plan to do is dependent on that. If not, then it's likely we will put off town meeting until July and go to a 1/12 budget.
Is there a short answer to this question? In what happens if we go to a 1/12 budget? Is there a short
Sure.
answer?
Yes, if we go to 1/12 budget, the selectmen are required to prepare a budget for July, submit it to the Department of Revenue for approval, and that budget should contain whatever expenditures we need to make in July. So it isn't really 1/12 because several of the payments we make are front-ended, like the first payment to Whitman Hanson. We pay 100% of the liability and property insurance premiums. So all of that comes into play. So that 1/12 budget is probably maybe a 1/7 budget or somewhere around there. And then each month, until we have a budget, we have to do the same thing.
So the in that 1/12 budget is just operating expenses?
No, it's well, yeah, I guess you would have to say it is. You don't have any articles to approve, so it's only those appropriations that are part of the operating budget.
Okay.
I have a quick question, Frank.
Yep.
If we went to a 1/12, are we allowed to spend monies that we have in free cash?
That is part of the legislation that without a town meeting, there are some provisions for emergency spending for free cash, but it would not be in the normal garden variety expenditures. It would be something extraordinary that required immediate payment.
And how would that affect the middle school feasibility study, where we wouldn't have a vote of the town?
As it stands now, we aren't planning on using the free cash. We're planning on borrowing.
No, right, but I'm talking about on the 1/12.
Oh, well, that's
If we
a
went
problem.
to a 1/12 and we didn't have a town meeting.
Right. We cannot proceed without a town meeting, which would mean MSBA would have to decide whether that's a qualifying event to permit us to delay. And we're not the only community in that position, so I can't imagine they wouldn't recognize extraordinary circumstances.
All right. So this committee here, we have 3 articles remaining to be voted for our upcoming town meeting. I guess one of them includes the fire department, and we've asked Chief Breno here to, some of the members here have had further questions, so we've invited him here. And I'm just trying to find it on the warrant, draft warrant.
Number 24?
24, thank you.
Right, firehouse renovations.
In the article, the draft article today reads, the draft article I have here, Frank, tell me if there's more to it.
It just says 57,800. It's not going to be finalized until we know specifically what we're going to spend it on.
Okay. So Chief Breno, if you want to go ahead and let us know what you want to spend that money on.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'm sure, and thank you for having me in this evening. And I'm sure there's some questions as to why this is a part of the capital project that the Collins Center did. And my explanation is when I sat with the Collins Center, the people I sat with were only interested in vehicle capital cost. They were not interested in any other capital costs that affected the fire department, such as this project itself. So this is going to be a regular article this year, moving forward. So these are some health and safety issues. These are some OSHA issues that affect the building that was built in 1901. As you know, Massachusetts became an OSHA state last year, so we're slowly trying to keep ourselves up and get our buildings modified for OSHA compliance. I emailed Frank last week. I think it was 15 pictures.
Yeah, let me see if I can bring them up, Tim.
Okay. Basically, all I'm looking to do in the fire station right now is back into 2000 renovation. If Frank can bring up the pictures, you'll see pictures 1, 2, and 3 are doors. There are several steel frame doors throughout the fire station that go from the apparatus floors to the living areas or to the washroom area. Back in 2000, they were installed incorrectly. As part of that project, we had to, oh yeah, big surprise with that project. So we had to go back and have rubber gaskets glued in place and aluminum frames like placed around all those door frames, so the doors would seal themselves tight, so the carcinogens and the diesel exhaust from all the apparatus was not migrating into the living quarters. Over the past 20 years, those doors have fallen apart. I think there's only one of them that shuts tight now. So all of those fixtures and those gaskets have to be replaced so they can latch properly and seal the outside from the inside, because the first floor living area and the second floor living area are both pressurized to keep the carcinogens out. So you can actually see the doors, the apparatus floor, when the Plimo vent system is running. And what the Plimo vent system is a big exhaust pipe that ties on to the exhaust, the fire apparatus that sucks the diesel smoke out, or the diesel exhaust. That's not 100%. And when the truck's back in, they're still emitting out the like diesel exhaust. So you can actually see these doors float open and just waver open when those systems are running. So that's one of the costs. Questions as I move forward, Dave, or do you just want me to cover everything?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Chief, do you guys have any kind of CO-NO2 gas detection system with an exhaust fan in your apparatus bay for when the trucks are backing in and leaving, other than the Plimo vent?
We do on both main floors. We also have a fan like actuated exhaust system that once the trucks hit the beam, those fans do kick on. So if the guys can't get the Plimo vent on as they're backing in, if there's only one person like in the truck or whatever, then at least those fans are operating to extract some of the diesel exhausts that's only going out. But nothing is perfect in a 1901 building.
Right.
Any further questions on that item?
And there's no recourse against the builder or the contractor or anybody, I take it. I know we've been down this road with the schools, but.
But I'd probably have a 300-page list of recourse I want to go after him on.
He's still in business?
I would assume so.
Well, if he's still in business, why don't we just file a claim with his insurance company?
It's 20 years ago. Will they take it?
Well, it's a claim. It's probably a claims made policy, not an occurrence policy. So it's his liability when the claim is made. You know, so I mean, who knows what they'll do?
Right.
Tim, does this go back to the 2000 renovation?
Yes. Yep. These doors were modified back in 2000, and then they had to be modified again because they weren't installed properly.
Was that ASAC?
Yeah, that's not ASAC, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything from ASAC.
And moving forward, that's a couple more of the problems that I'm trying to address this year. Is the work that was done back in 2000 is failing. Picture number 4, if you had it, is a picture of the ice machine.
I'm still trying to bring it up and I can't find it.
Okay. Well, they're cute pictures. Picture number 4 is
The ice machine in the fire station, Frank.
Yes, there's a picture of the ice machine that's on the back apparatus floor. It's behind the out engine and the second ambulance. And per OSHA regulations, those cannot be on any apparatus floor or on like any location where it can be affected by the diesel exhaust or like any other type of fumes. So because of the building, the only place that I can put it is in the old hose tower that's on the first floor.
Wow.
and that's the only place I can safely go, and that's the only place that they will approve it. So part of this project also is to close off the hose tower, which if you do ever get the pictures, it's pictures 5 and 6. It shows you that there's still a big gaping hole in the first floor of the building inside the hose tower behind 2 doors. One of the doors does not lock or shut properly. OSHA's not. Yeah, there you go. So that's that's one of the pictures for the hose tower. So what my plan is to close off that hole, secure it off, and then place it, and then line the brick inside of the hose tower and treat it, and then place a drop ceiling that's insulated above it and basically block off the top part of the hose tower. My reasoning behind that is twofold. Number one is I can use the hose tower now as a usable space for my EMS supplies, along with putting the ice machine in there. And number two, back when they did the construction in 2000, the great architect, and what was his name, Frank? He used to call me Fireman Tim.
Oh, yes. Was the Mount Vernon group, wasn't it?
Yeah. So back in 2000, he decided in his infinite wisdom that we needed to cut a 4x6 hole in the side of the hose tower and put a ventilation system up there because the building could breathe. I don't have to tell you that any day it goes below 30 degrees out, the heating system on the first floor is maxed out and you can't get the first floor above 30 degrees. So what we have done now is we've taken insulation and plywood and we've tried to close that hole in, but every time that you get a strong wind, it blows everything out of the hole. So what my plan is to put a drop ceiling in, seal that off completely. I put a drop ceiling in, insulate it. I also have radio equipment that's in that hose tower. It should be climate controlled. So this will all be within that one confined area. Which would make perfectly good sense and keep that system operational. The third part about it is the entryway. Is if you look at the side entryway, those are the doors. So that aluminum frame was added after they put these doors in, and then there's a black molding on the other side of it.
Is the picture displayed right now?
Yeah. So right now, that door cracked like that. That's with that exhaust fan running on the apparatus floor, trying to suck the air out. The pressurization upstairs. That's the broken latch on one of the areas. So if you look tight against the silver frame against the black, there's a rubber gasket that's supposed to be in there. That door off. So that's the close proximity. That red is obviously the fire truck. And then there's that door right there. About 2 feet behind that door is the vehicle's exhaust pipe. So the third part of the project, Frank, say picture number 9, maybe. Pick 9 or 10 or 8. It doesn't matter.
I can't see the numbers because they're too small. But
there you go. There's one of them.
The back steps.
So that's the side entryway. So the steel railing that's on the side entryway is both rotted out. So if you look at the back leg, that's not even touching the concrete. That's completely rotted out. And then all of the supports around it, all that concrete has broken away, and that railing is becoming unstable. In addition to that, the stepway up is all cracking and breaking apart, and it's only a matter of time before that all breaks apart. So that whole thing has to be redone. That's the interior picture of the hose tower. That brick would be cleaned up and a drop ceiling just above those pipes to seal that all off to save on HVAC. And then the final part of it is by moving the EMS supplies into that room, I can take the EMS room out back and make that into a workable space for another office, because I have 6 offices working out of one office right now that they cannot, it's just not functional. There's the hose tower. And if you look all the way up the top, that bright spot, I believe that's the vent that Stan or whatever his name was decided that we should put in there. So I want to seal off just above that
I
radio.
think I'm in a loop.
Get it?
Yeah,
So I want to seal off just above that first landing. That brown box is part of the radio system, and you can see that there's a fan off to the left because in the summer months it has to be cooled down. And then the final thing is the whole inside of the building needs to be painted. It's been 20 years, and Frank has a picture right there of one of the windows. That's from a water leak that's not been repaired. So that's the final project. So all that comes to approximately $55,000. I've got draft quotes from several different like people out there that do this work. So that's what I'm asking for.
Tim, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, one is your handicap access to the fire station. That's to the front door.
It's to the side door of those pictures I just showed you. Yes.
I think we're okay. Right, I know where it is now.
Yep, it
Second of
runs
all,
up-
that cutaway in the hose tower.
Yeah.
Is you're going to seal that with brick? You're not just
No, we'll find. I'll have the contractor like probably throw insulation in there and maybe like put a piece of plywood over it and lag bolt it in or something to that effect, like just a seal.
But will that last? I mean,
I don't-
is that just
I would leave it up to what the contractor thinks it should be done.
right? I mean, or either that, or what about a metal grating in there? Will say if you want air to go through.
It has metal grating in there now, and that's the problem.
Okay.
I could always replace with a piece of glass is what I could do.
Oh yeah, I personally don't think that piece of plywood. I think that would be just not really fixing it, but just rubber stamping it. I mean, just if you're gonna do it, why not just brick in that spot? But
Yeah,
that's my thought.
Contractor that's doing the work in the hose tower. I
Right,
defer to what their recommendation is for that.
right. And as far as the back steps go, you plan on knocking that down and building all new steps and with new railing, or try and repair it?
No, the mason that I had come in and look at it, it's twofold. So the railing company has to come in and take the railing out.
Yeah.
And then the masoner, the mason said that he will then I might come in, jackhammer up a lot of the broken away area, reframe it, or
And then
reform,
put
new cement in there.
Yeah. And second of all, you remember the old days when the trucks were a lot lighter, and then when we bought the heavy trucks, the floor wasn't made, we couldn't handle the weight.
Yeah.
Has that problem been solved now, even with the new equipment?
Yes.
Yeah.
When we bought the ladder truck back in 2004, they put screw jacks in the basement to resupport that floor down below.
Okay. That's all I got.
But you bring up an interesting point, and Bob Curran and I have already had a discussion, and at some point we are going to bring in an engineer to look at that floor and just assure that we're good, because of the issue that's like going on in Plymouth right now.
Yep.
Fred, you had a question?
Well, I was gonna, maybe suggest something like a cement block, not a cement block, a glass block, to be put in that hole. It might look nice and still let some light in, but give some insulation value, etc.
They can make a fire room up there.
My personal opinion is anything that affects the health and safety of the people that are in the building has to be done. It's got to be a priority, as far as that goes. So.
Thank you.
Justin?
I just wanted to ask, I guess the chief, do you think we'll be able to get a contractor to work in the building and before the pandemic passes? They'll be willing to work around.
I've had my, we've had repair technicians in to fix the apparatus. I've had the Plymouth people in. So yeah,
Okay.
We just keep everybody away from them, and they're on their own in their own area with the doors open.
Yeah, fortunately, that area is not something that the department regularly accesses. And I would think they'd have plenty of time to work in there independently.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, also, Tim, what's the ice machine for?
We have the ice machine for firefighter rehab. As part of the NFPA protocol, we have to have coolers on the apparatus with ice water. So when a firefighter goes down, or if you have a long duration incident, you have to provide rehab supplies, which is basically
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
It's for Friday night drinks.
Yeah. If you want to go to the beach and you need a cooler of ice, swing by.
Yeah.
I like to circulate it.
All right.
Been
Any
done
other
before.
questions on that warrant article? So, Frank, in regards to the warrant article, will it be rewritten, or is it going to stand as?
It'll be written to specify the broad step projects, the repair. I think Tim sent an outline in a spreadsheet with the tasks to be done. So the article will read to see if the town will vote to appropriate to make the following repairs and improvements, and then we'll bullet them.
And that cost him up to 55,000, right?
Yeah, 55, 57. I forget what I gave you guys.
Well, originally it was 50,600 and something.
Yeah, and then
It's on here for 57,000.
57 now.
Yeah, and then I brought the door and window people in, and they looked at the side entryway, and that door is.
Oh yeah, it's the new one. Yeah, okay.
It's
Yep,
a
looking
no.
at the wrong page.
The fact of the matter is, the appropriation should be sufficient to pay for those things, and
Yep.
if there's additional money remaining, that will close out to the general fund.
Right.
And the work is complete.
Are we comfortable that 57,000 would be that type of a number? Or
Bob,
should
you
it
looked
be
at that, right? You need to unmute, Bob.
Sorry, Frank. That should be enough to cover it.
Okay.
I've got to call into two other companies about the railings at the outside handicap ramp. One of the guys says he's supposed to meet me out there tomorrow. We'll see.
I did the railings in the front of the town hall when we replaced them. Did a
That's who I
phenomenal
called.
job. That guy's around. I would.
Yeah, the railings are good.
He's
They
out
just
of
rot out at the base.
Plymouth.
Yeah, those railings are nice. They just rotted out at the base.
Yep. And that typically happens unless they're pre-coated and you put a spacer, a fitted spacer in so that it's not contacting the concrete and the water.
What surprises me is how the concrete broke away from all of them.
We had the same problem on the side rails at the town hall.
Yeah.
When we did the work there.
All
Okay,
right.
so do you need a motion, Dave?
Well, I figured we'd wait for Ernie to explain the two articles he's associated with. Let them go, and then we'll take the votes after that. So unless anyone has any further questions for Chief Breno, we can let him go if he wants to stay.
I'm good.
Sure he wants to stay.
Probably wants to see how we vote.
Thanks, Dan.
We're gonna keep him in suspense.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Chief.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Tim.
Night, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Second, we have Ernie Sandlin with the Regional School District to explain articles numbers
25 and 26.
25 and 26. Number 25 reads today as a draft to see if the town will vote to appropriate $35,000 from free cash to replace/repair the sidewalks at the Conley and Duval elementary schools and the Whitman Middle School, or take any other action relative thereto, proposed by the school committee. 26, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $160,000 from free cash to purchase and install generators at the Conley and Duval elementary schools, or take any other action relative thereto, proposed by the school committee. And just for anyone just who wasn't present or is watching and didn't see our last meeting in regard when we discussed this particular warrant initially came in as one generator to be mobilized between the schools, and then a discussion amongst this committee. It was decided to change it for 2 standalone generators. So Ernie, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'll take the sidewalks first. The freeze store, and the chief had some pictures to show you. The side entrance to the fire station, the freeze store, where that railing that was put in there popped out because of freeze store. We have that across every school in Whitman. And someone asked me the question, so as far as compaction and the quality of concrete that was going in there, I think I don't have pictures to show you, but I share the same architect Mount Vernon group that the chief had doing the work over there, doing the design work. I don't think there was a lot of oversight to make sure that the compaction was correct or the quality of the concrete met the specification, whether it was 3,000 pound mix or 4,000 pound mix. We've replaced multiple squares at Conley, Duval, and Whitman Middle. And I think for me, when I walk over to the schools and I see heaving of one side walk versus the other, it's a trip hazard. I could take multiple, I could level it out and that won't last a winter. I could grind it, and that kind of is predicated on the freeze door. Again, that will go up and down. So my feeling is, and I think we did this about probably 5 or 6 years ago at Duval, and we did a huge project with DPW's Conley. I'm thinking 8 years ago, maybe even longer. It was the first year Bruce Martin was the superintendent that we replaced the entrance area to the Conley School. Again, a lot of the issues we're dealing with was design issues by an architect that really didn't have a lot of oversight. And the contract is going to be a contract to take advantage of whatever they can take advantage of. So again, I'm requesting this. There are trip hazards at all 3 buildings, and I just want to eliminate them. And the summertime is the best time for me to do it.
Okay.
The second one, if nobody has any questions about the sidewalks. The second one is...
Sorry, Ernie, I did have one question. I apologize. I was on mute there. It's a small job, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
How back in the day when I was in college, I took concrete samples at a construction site for testing. So I know that activity happens. I don't know how much it costs. So, and this being such a relatively small job, are there any procedures that we could do to prevent to mitigate any potential to make sure that the contractor does the job to spec?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, Dave. Compaction test is important. We'd probably, if we were going to use a processed mix, we'd probably achieve 98% compaction. But in order for me to do that, I have to send a soil sample to just take any engineering firm out there, Briggs, and send them a soil sample, and then they give me the gradation of that, and then they tell me what the mix, what we're going to end up with as far as compaction. That costs money. I would say for a soil sample and for an engineer, a soils engineer on site, we could probably spend about $3,000. And then they're going to want to take concrete as far as the slump test on the concrete. They're going to want that too, because they'll say, well, I took the soil sample, I didn't test the concrete. And all that costs money. And it is actually a good way to do it. But the last time we did it at the high school, Bruce had introduced me to a mix that he got from a local contractor. Man, that was like concrete underneath. I think what we have at the other schools is a material that probably wasn't compacted properly, and the gradation was never taken. And maybe instead of a 4,000 pound mix on the concrete, we got a 3,000 pound mix. If we would make sure that we have good compaction and we get the mix, the concrete mix that we specified, which would be a 4,000 mix.
Okay. So right. So you're talking, you could spend up to 10% of the job on this just for engineering oversight and sampling.
Yeah, and I trust DPW when they run that. They've got that mini vibrator roller. When they run that over, it's almost like the dinosaurs are coming, because you could see everything vibrating in the background. When they run that over the area, it's pretty compact. So to answer your question, we've always kind of gone by the soil's good soil. They use it for roadways, they use it for sidewalks, and we just go with it. But we can definitely know there is no money in there for the sieve analysis. There is no money in there for compaction, because that will definitely cost us about $3,000 to get that done.
Okay. Justin, you had a question?
Just on compaction, something I deal with at work on occasion. Most of the gas companies in the area have purchased something called the dynamic cone penetrometer. It's basically a calibrated weight you drop, and I think it's 15 drops in fairly solid soil. If it doesn't drop through the soil a certain amount, it's considered a good compaction.
Yeah.
I think it's like $1,000 instrument, so because it's a calibrated weight, but it's something that maybe Bob Curran or the DPW might want to look at for future projects if this is going to be a concern going forward.
What's the name of it again?
Dynamic cone penetrometer. They call it a DCP.
Okay.
That might be a rentable item from like Pine Environmental, US Environmental, or someone like that.
Hey, you might be right. I mean, that's not, again, that's not outside our scope. I think we could look into that, and just to make sure that we don't revisit these concrete squares again 10 years down the road.
Sure.
We make sure that we have the right compaction and the right concrete mix, and then the joints. That's the really important part. Sealing the joints to make sure that we don't get infiltration of moisture into those joints and under the slab during the wintertime, because that's the freeze thaw issue that we deal with.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Fred, is that you?
Yeah. Ernie, how much of the project is over at the middle school, and is there anything that we can do to mitigate the trip factor without having to spend where we do have a feasibility study upcoming?
When I was putting the estimates together, that area was around $5,000, the area that we had to redo. But that was contingent, again, on all three buildings. So to answer your question, Fred, yes, we could grind it, but I've not seen good results with the grinding. It looks like a piece of grinded concrete. And if we have a rough winter, that area that might be smooth during the summer might heave up again, and then we'd have to get somebody back there and grind it again. I think the best solution in reference to Whitman Middle is to take those 4 or 5 sections out and pour new concrete. And one of the things that we're doing now is we're connecting the slab next to it with steel rods. Something they do, they just picked a space and they ran the jointer down when they were doing it. Now what we're doing is we're drilling into the side of the slab that we're keeping. So if the slab moves, it all moves together. It's not like this up and down. So that's it's not innovative. It's a no-brainer. You just connect those two, and then where that joint, we tool that joint there, we caulk it, so we don't have the moisture going in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that? All right, Ernie, next one.
Okay, so the generators at Duval and Conley, I appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to talk about this. When I met with facilities committee, I had talked about Caterpillar, and there was a lot of discussion. Isn't there another? Well, I took Caterpillar as, for me, it is the best piece of equipment out there. I know there's a bunch of other companies out there, but for us at the high school in particular, we've never had an issue with the Caterpillar. And I notice a lot of the rental equipment that's out there will be a Caterpillar because it's dependable. So now that I kind of heard that you guys are interested in doing something different, looking at different equipment, Kohler, another generator that's high quality. And the interesting part about Kohler is it's got the farm diesel from John Deere. That's the standard that's out there. So this equipment would have to be put in a specification. We'd have to put it out to bid. And that would be one of the pieces of equipment that I would focus in on as a Kohler, because of a couple of reasons. With the Caterpillar, we can call Southworth Milton Cat, and they can be there in 2 hours. I also want to kind of, when we write the specification, I don't want some generic generator that I have to wait 3 hours or 6 hours from somebody from New Jersey or Maine to come and service it. So when we put the specification together, we want to make sure that we have something comparable. And I know price is the key for this, but I think in long term, that's what we try to do in long term, that you have a Kohler or a Caterpillar, you put a specification together, I think we'll be good. So we've had a lot of discussion with the size. And we don't know that at this time because Mount Vernon Group did not give me a good set of documents that I can kind of take apart and say, this is the amount of power that I need to do certain panels. And the other thing they didn't do, which they should have done, is they should have separated a lot of the electrical units. Like I'll just take Hanson Middle. There's emergency panels throughout the building that the generator, it might not be a lot, generator is hooked to. In this situation, we have panels that are powering up our refrigerators, freezers, boilers, pumps, and our sub panels or our lighting panels. They're not separated. So we'd have to do that. And that's kind of where we're at right now, trying to figure out how much power or what size of a generator do we need. Both buildings are 120, 208, 3-phase. So there's a lot, if you look on the internet, there's a lot of generators that are out there that you can get at a pretty decent price. But we have a menu here that we have to meet, and 120, 208, 3-phase, the beginning of it. And the other part of that is, what are we going to power up? Is it going to be just put the generator in, put the transfer switch in? Or is it going to be put the generator in, transfer switch, and then try to hook up the refrigerator, cooler, boiler, pumps? So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And there's a lot of questions I have for you guys, that, it gets to the point where doing a little research, just a transfer switch could cost us for this type of power between $20,000 and $25,000, depending on the distance from the generator to the building itself. So there's a lot of information I still have to put together, but I'm excited that we're moving in that direction. I think that part that I was looking at was with the, and I know it was the portable generator was not well received by you guys. But the point I was trying to make is, if I could outfit both of those buildings with the transfer switch and also get key components, boilers, freezer, refrigerator, pumps, and some lighting included in that, then I was kind of doing my job. But with this, I've got to do a load calculation because we're in between 125 to 150 kilowatts for a generator. And I'm hoping that as I reduce the need, because we have LED lights in the building now, we're upgrading, we're putting high efficient pumps in there, that it's not the old school 20 years ago where they have over at Whitman Middle, they have, or I would say at Conley, we have a pump that is drawing a lot of electricity. Anything we change out, we're going with an efficient pump. So all those things have to be considered. So I could talk forever on this, but my main goal is to get the generators, get the transfer switch, light up or power up the kitchen panel, the networking, because what happens with us at Conley, well, if the power goes out, we can't get into the building because that Infinity system is not, the battery doesn't last as long as you would think. So we would put that on there, the boilers and some lighting panels. So, that's my goal. That has been my goal from day one. Have I had people look at it? Yes, I have. Are they willing to come back with a price? Yeah, they'll come back with a price, but it's going to be under their terms, and it's all about when we can kind of put this whole thing together and then put a specification together, because there's not a lot of people out there that are willing to put the effort into it, and they know it's a bid and they might not get it. For me, I just 3 or 4 vendors that we've had at the schools, I take some information from each one and then put together a packet, and then we'll figure out what's good for us.
Frank, you had a question?
Yeah, Ernie, have you talked to Peter Palazzo about this? Peter was a huge help with us when we scoped out and determined what we needed for the town hall. In fact, the contractor and engineer on the job over-engineered the generator we have. When we run all systems, we're running at 37%. And Peter told me that, but they insisted we needed that, so we went ahead with it, only to find out Peter was right. So that he's a resource that we might want to take advantage of.
He always is, Frank. He's always helpful to us. The tennis court lighting up at the high school, he was very helpful with us. Any project. So I will call him and talk to him about that. I think it'd be a good idea to have him meet with me, meet with the contractors, the group of contractors that I've been talking with. So I don't have a problem. It is excellent to work with.
Of course, you could always reach out to that other guy who used to use generators.
Yeah.
Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, Ernie, when we write the spec, is this something that we can put in as a proprietary item, or does it have to be a basis of design and equals?
No, I think when we do the specification, we'll identify the requirements and what we want. As far as it's going to be diesel. I looked at gas, but it was too involved to do gas. So there is a certain motor. To answer your question, I think we can write the specification to get exactly what we want.
What about natural gas?
That's what I'm saying, Fred. The natural gas at both schools are at unfortunately, they're at different locations in the building where the power would be. Like the main gas line at Duval is at a different location where we want to do the power hookup. So plus I think you get a better bang for the buck with the diesel. So again, to answer your question, we'll do the specification with and hopefully And we've done this with just about everything we've done. We've been able to look at the need, specification together, and it's come back with what we want or what we've had budgeted, and it solved the problem.
How many gallons of fuel does the tank hold?
Well, the high school,
or the high school one compared to that.
High school is 500 gallons, and it's full. I would say we'll probably be looking at 250 gallon tank. So I think from that point, it depends, because each company has a different criteria set up.
Yeah, you don't want to know what's at the police station.
Dave, I have a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, Ernie, rather, the 160,000 that you're saying that the two generators would cost, does that include the installation?
Clear that up, Ernie. When the proposal was originally presented to the committee, it was less money, and it was a plan to buy a generator that can be towed back and forth between the buildings. What we said to Ernie, why don't we increase the appropriation and provide enough money for permanent generators at both buildings? And that's where the 160 came from. But it wasn't any specific knowledge of what was going to be purchased. I know the generator for the town hall wound up costing us between $60,000 and $65,000. So we picked the 80 times 2.
Okay, that being said, Frank and Ernie, if you could, and Bob, do you think that this amount of money would cover what we need?
Yes.
Because if we have the money and we would appropriate it and put it in a fund, gives Ernie the feel that he can go out and start looking, knowing that that's what he's got, and come back to us and say, okay, this is what I know we got 160,000. I'm able to get the whole job done for X amount of dollars. And if it's less, that's money that goes back into the general fund, free cash. If it's more, then we can talk about it. But at least he has a placeholder of an amount, if we can afford it. It doesn't handcuff them, is what I'm thinking.
Dan, I want to answer that question. Is that going to get us what we want? No. There's a lot involved with, like I had said when I started out, the architect Mount Vernon group did not separate the panels so they could be involved with a future generation. So everything's lumped together, and that's the problem. So those have to be separated. But I picked out a couple that are absolutely that need to be done, and that's the kitchen panels and obviously the boilers and the pumps. So that would be in the specification for the new generator, that they would be responsible for setting the generator, hooking the generator up, purchasing and installing the transfer switch, and then specifically at Duval, go into the kitchen panel, boiler panel, and any sub panel that we need, the pump. And then the same thing would be at Conley. So I don't know what that number is. That's the problem. And I don't know if it's 125 or 150 kW. It might be less. And if it is less, and we can achieve what we want to achieve, then it's going to be less for the generator, purchase of the generator, but it might be more labor involved in adding more panel. So I just want to make sure you're clear on that.
Well, I guess my question, Ernie, to you is then, how do you go forward without, we could say, fine, let's get it done, but if there's no money put aside, we don't want that, at least the 160,000 used for something else.
Well, I know Fred Small is there, but it obviously won't be used for something else.
No, I don't mean that. I mean the 160,000 for another town project.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
You know, it's got to be specific what that money needs to be used for, and and you can't use it only for the generators. I'm saying.
Well, what if we?
Right, good.
What if we looked at it this way, Ernie? How big of a generator would you need to power the whole school? Because if we're powering those critical components, the rest of the school to me is efficient LED lighting, pretty much. There's not much else. You know, because you want to take care of the computers and the networks.
Yeah.
You know, your boilers, etc. So maybe instead of worrying about all the wiring that needs to be done in the structure, it's as simple as one transfer switch that powers the panel when the power goes out. And it's, you know, perhaps a larger generator, but you're saving money on the other end because you're not having to worry about wiring everything throughout the whole building.
That's a thought.
Well, I you know, again, it's great that you guys supporting this article. We just have to figure out, with the generator, we can go from $40,000 to $60,000. Put this in the back of your head. For a used generator, 125 kilowatt is around 40. For a brand new one is around 60. The transfer switch that can go between $20,000 and $25,000. So right there, right off the top, you're talking significant amount of money just to start. So talking about what Fred's talking about, if we were to connect, I'd have to put that generator in a location, make it easier so they can connect to the building. And when the power goes out, if I'm getting what Fred's saying, we'd have to spec that generator. So if the power went out, entire building would be lit up, and the entire building.
Like a whole house generator. Like my house, for instance, the power goes out. Basically, if I'm not paying attention, I don't know it.
Right.
Because all of a sudden everything's back on.
Right. So hopefully I was able to answer any of the questions that you had.
Right. I just don't want you to say, okay, this is what we need. Am I going to be able to get it? And you're convincing me that this is something that should be done. And if we have the money, at least put that aside so you know at least you have a base.
Yeah. I agree with you, Dan.
I mean, maybe more, maybe less. And I like Fred's idea. Maybe now you want to get a wiring inspector in on it. Let him pick at it.
I think, if I can speak, I think Frank had the best idea by having Peter go down there, take a look at everything. I think step one is identifying the circuits that need to roll over. Step two is identifying the sum of the load that you're going to absorb by a generator. And then you can size the wires, the transfer switch, the generator, everything after that. And step one is identifying everything. Right. I mean, it sounds like that's what Ernie's asking for. Is it plausible to go forward and start identifying everything and then come back with real numbers and real solutions? I think right now it's there's too many unknowns.
I agree, Don. I agree.
Well, do we put a placeholder on the town warrant then?
Well, and that's what I was just going to say. If we could put a placeholder, and how much time do we have in order to come up with the exact number? I mean, we can obviously have a placeholder with language.
Well, I mean, it's no. I mean, there have been warrant articles out there that have exceeded their budgets, right? And were originally passed at one value, and then needed to additional funds were added to that to finish out the project. So this isn't out of the ordinary. I think what might happen is if this article doesn't move forward this year, then you're taking steps backwards, and I think we need to take kind of steps forward. Frank, was that your hand?
Yeah, I think we want to be certain before we move forward. But if we don't start with an appropriation. It's all brand new next year. I'm very comfortable with recommending that we appropriate the 160,000 to provide for purchase and installation of generators at the schools, with the understanding that when you compile all this information, if additional money is needed, then we have to return it. It'd be no different than the air conditioning project at the town hall. You hold your place until we hold the second meeting and get the additional appropriation so we have enough funds to move forward. I just don't want to let it roll by a year.
Yep, I agree, Frank.
Anyone have any more specific questions for Ernie?
Just one thought. If we feel that we're going to be short, will we be better off to change the number from 160 to 175?
I think at this point, I'm not answering for Frank, but at this point, the placeholder of 160 is a good beginning. We'll start working on that. Gives me the incentive to work on putting the spec together, Fred. Put the specification together, get a couple quotes to make sure that we're still talking about the same animal, and then start putting something together, because we're never going to know what the number is till we go out to bid. We're never going to know that.
We're talking about the Conley and Duval, correct?
Yep. Correct.
Ernie, does one school need it more than the other?
They're both in.
Okay.
I would say as far as outages, it's changed. It used to be Duval was the poster child for outages, but now Conley, I don't know what's happened. Conley seems to get a lot more outages lately.
Yeah, birthday at my street. Because I was just saying, if we appropriate this amount of money and we can only get one school done and there's money left over, we can always the following year appropriate enough to finish it off.
Okay.
Just a thought. Nance, well, wish happy birthday, whoever it is.
Okay. Any other further questions for Ernie specifically?
Nope.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Ernie.
Ernie, thank you. Pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. While it's still fresh in everyone's mind, we'll jump right into voting the warrant articles. We'll start with 26. This is the one we were just discussing. I'll entertain a motion. Sorry, hold on. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Small makes a motion to recommend Article 26, generators for the Conley and Duval, for the amount of $160,000.
Second by Dan Salvucci.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Let's see. Frank.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Dan Salvucci.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Fred Small.
Yes.
Don Essen.
Yes.
Justin Evans.
Yes.
Dave Cordero. Passes 8-0.
Now, one of the things I would suggest, and knowing that you're on the finance committee, they're going to have a clear understanding about thought process, is when this is presented at town meeting, that we give full disclosure to the fact that there's a lot of work that's to be done. We know 160 is probably a minimum number. We wanted to commit that money to the project, and we may be coming back for more. That's what we did with the AC. People understood it, they accepted it, and we didn't get beat up the second time.
Yep. Yeah, that's in my notes. I'm anticipating that discussion during subcommittee reports for the finance committee. Okay, so that one passes. So we'll stay on the schools. Article 25. Does anybody need me to reread it? And I'll entertain a motion for Article 25.
I'll make that motion, Dan Salvucci.
Salvucci?
Mr. Small will second it.
Seconded by Small. Further discussion? Okay. Justin Evans. Don Essen.
Yes.
Fred Small.
Yes.
Aaron Taylor.
Yes.
Dan Salvucci.
Yes.
Paul Curran,
Yes.
Frank Lanham,
Yes.
Dave Cordero, unanimous. And the last article to be discussed, now this one in the draft warrant is still not, doesn't provide the specifications. Does this committee feel comfortable with making the vote based on the descriptions that we had in the way Frank had described him, the text of the article? Does anyone have?
I would feel comfortable personally after the chief's presentation.
Yeah, specifically where the OSHA issues.
Is anybody uncomfortable, I guess would be the question. Okay, so I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for Article 24.
All right, Dan Sabucci, that motion. Article
Mr. Small
24.
will second it.
Okay, further discussion? And all right, we'll start with Dan.
Yes.
Paul Curran,
Yes.
Frank Lanham,
Yes.
Dave Cordero, yes. Aaron Taylor,
Yes.
Fred Small,
Yes.
Don Essen,
Yes.
Justin Evans,
Yes.
unanimous. All right, that concludes all the draft warrant capital articles for this committee that are up for our next town meeting, whenever that will be. So if you've been listening over the past years that we've met, if you've been listening, there's I won't call it a theme, but there's an issue that comes up an awful lot during when you speak of past capital projects, and that's the mistakes that were made, or even may have been what's the word I'm looking for? May have been
Shoddy workmanship.
Yeah, it may have been eliminated.
It seems like engineering deficiencies and the skilled craftsmen for the companies.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely a combination of a lot of things, individual things along with combination of other things. So if you read the state guidance on the mission of this committee, one is not only to identify capital projects, but it's also to oversee capital projects to make sure they're done correctly.
Ooh.
So yeah. So I'd like to try to implement that going forward, and
we'll send Dan down.
Yeah.
So
not my expertise.
And without getting into specifics right now, I'd like for every committee member here to think of a department or a specific capital project that would interest them. And what I'm thinking is, maybe doing something similar to what the finance committee does in creating liaisons and trying to not be a thorn in the completion of a project, but try to enhance it somehow and confirm, that projects are done correctly. And this is it all comes down to the benefit of a town, because if it's done correctly, that is in essence cost savings, because it avoids having to do something again somewhere down the future.
Okay, Dave, if I may, isn't that the job of the facilities manager?
It is.
To a limited degree. When you have a building project, there are a couple of things that happen. Depending on the size of the project, you may hire an architect, you may hire an OPM, you may hire a clerk of the works. The key element to these larger projects is the selection process. I mean, if you look at these projects, we had a clerk of the works at the police station. We had an OPM at the police station. We still went through hell on the project.
Yep.
I don't even want to talk about the fire station. I think we had to sober the guy up each morning before he could start.
And the first project on the
So that's key number one. When we get into the smaller projects, for example, this electrical, the generators, each facilities manager should be intimately involved in it. Should know what's going on, be aware of the process. The inspector should be top of it, making sure that in each phase things are being done correctly. But you can't watch someone 24/7. So we have to do a better job of identifying the quality of the contractors, the work they've done. We actually disqualified the low bid at the station and ended up with the next low bid. And unfortunately, if we dug deeper, we may not have selected him either.
I know, I failed.
Spent a little more, but we would have got a better contractor. And that's really the responsibility for all of us to know and be aware of who we're doing business with and why we're doing business. So I agree with Dave that this committee, and the reason it was named the Building Projects, Facilities, and Capital Expenditures, was the three roles that are associated with that: planning the projects, being very involved in the capital piece, and being sure that we're investing our capital appropriately. So it might at some points be perceived to be interference for some people, but we need to get the message out there that we have a unique concern for these projects as we approve them, and we want to monitor them, and we want to know how it's progressing. So yes, Dave, you're absolutely right. We need to have ownership in the process.
But Frank, what does the average, what's the people on this book committee? I know myself, I'm not a builder. I know nothing about electricity, nothing about the density of cement.
We have an engineer, we have a builder, we have an HVAC guy. I mean, we have a lot of strength on this committee, and so we have general experience in overseeing process.
Well, then maybe as when a project is being done as a committee, we walk the project together.
Well, right. So my thought is that, you know, when I asked, you know, what would interest you, right? We have a varying backgrounds here. So I'm assuming like some projects would be very interesting. You know, some people here would say, geez, I'd really like to be involved in this project, and here's my knowledge base, and here's what value I can bring to it. You know, I think everyone here probably has more engineering experience than I do, even though my last job for 15 years, I worked for an environmental engineering company, construction company, but that wasn't my job. My job, we were a small niche, but what would happen was some of those other groups would bring me in and say, hey, we need your help. And I did some OPM work, and it wasn't, you know, and you know, I got in situations where I didn't understand everything, but that was fine. I understood to ask the right questions. And by asking the right questions, I would go back to the office and go to the engineers and say, this is what I saw. These are the questions I had. And they were like, yeah, you're right, because these are the issues that you're identifying for me. And then so I would take that information and give it to the expert to go forward. So what I did notice in a lot of those projects that I was involved in is that the more that the owner has interest and brings just internal people in, increases the awareness of everybody involved. And so when, you know, avoid contractor shortcuts, mishaps, and all those other things. So if this committee can bring that to the table, I think we'll start seeing less we'll start hearing of less mistakes.
Less mistakes or less back. Yeah.
Right. And, you know,
A lot of work. Yeah.
You know, the finance committee, they continually ask, geez, you know, we approved, town committee approved such and such projects, calendar year, whatever. And I wonder where those stand. And there's just not enough time there would be enough time there could be enough time, but it would take a long time to have a department head come in and say, okay, yes, not only do I have to explain budget each year and explain out these issues and my capital needs, but let's talk about the past. So if this committee can talk about the ongoing, bring that information to the finance committee, then that would relieve some of the issues that they have on their end. Fred, you had a question? You had a question or comment?
Well, I think the other thing we should perhaps consider is requiring performance bonds for X amount of years from contractors. 20 years, 30 years, etc. That would guarantee through a bond that their workmanship, is proper. Because we keep finding that they take shortcuts, they cut corners. I mean, the high school, we had Ernie, and to me, Ernie's the type of guy, despite what he said, I swear he can stick his finger into a batch of concrete and tell you what PSI it is, and whether it's a good or bad batch. That's the respect I have for that man. Okay, we had him and we had a project manager, and there was still different things that get discovered, from the high school project that were, despite everything that was done.
Yeah.
So
when you have the right OPM, I was involved in a project where we had the past company I worked for had an HVAC expert, and they were building a new municipal building. I forget what it was, and he's like, "This is great. However, look at phase 5. This is going to be a huge change order for them because of X, Y, and Z." Then the conversation went above my head. But what he was able to do is just able to identify issues in the future during the bidding process, and then the owners were able to circumvent issues that would have caused a change order. So
despite having that expertise, they still cut corners, and we still end up things like the Duval roof, with the EFIS not being attached properly, etc., or according to spec. So the architect in this case, I guess, did it right, specking it out. It was the contractor didn't follow the plans properly. But if we had something like a 20-year or 30-year bond, or 20 years even from when it failed, now we'd have an insurance company. It wouldn't matter that the contractor's out of business or come back as a different company, whatever. You have a physical insurance company unless that insurance company's failed.
Isn't that what a bond is about?
Fred and Dan, the proposal, I guess we can think about it. There are a couple of issues that come to mind immediately. One of them is whether or not the state will even allow us to require that as part of a project.
Oh, yeah.
And if we do, it's certainly going to affect how the project is bid, because it is very difficult to get long-term performance bonds. They're typically for the duration of the project cycle. You might get a performance bond that's associated with ensuring that they complete the job and that they pay their suppliers. But when you start getting into warranties, which is really what we're talking about, I don't know, something that we'd have to look at.
You wouldn't be looking at something that failed under normal use and service.
Right.
You would be looking at something that fails because it wasn't built properly. And you could even have, I assume if it was legal to do, you could even do it as an option and then decide, on the, after the bid.
Right.
You can do
But
it as
you
an
also have
alternate.
to look at the life cycle of things. I mean, the sidewalks we repaired at the Conley were, I believe, 10 years old when they dropped. And they dropped because that area that's had an extraordinary amount of wet ground and seepage over time caused a problem. Maybe if we looked hard when we did the addition, we might not have added to that building, but we did a whole bunch of things wrong. I get what you're saying, and it's something that we should probably look at, but I think the selection criteria is what's going to be our best protection.
I think that's important, or more important, actually. Do they have the right references, and have they done the right thing and been around long enough? So,
we thought we had the right OPM when we did the police station.
Right.
He came with high praise from Jonathan McCready, who was on the committee at the time. And 2 months into it, we find out the guy was a joke.
Yeah, we wind up firing him and hiring someone else.
Yeah. They can look great on paper, but end up, garbage later on.
So this time, we have 2 feasibility studies coming up for vote. If they're passed, then we have another vote for building, large building projects. So that's something to think about. But even these smaller projects, like I said, think about if you're really interested in any of them, if you want to be involved in them, and then maybe when we reconvene at our next meeting, we can maybe divvy out and have liaisons toward these projects or towards departments, something of that nature. Now, the state guidance for these types of committees that we're on here recommend that capital projects be submitted to this committee, so this committee then presents them to the Board of Selectmen. The time frame they have for spring town meetings is that that this committee would present that to the Board of Selectmen by October. Sounds like a long time away, but you take the summer months out, and it's right around the corner. So I'm currently drafting a letter or an email correspondence to the department heads outlining our three steps towards development of the capital program, improvement program, and the deadlines that we have. Luckily, we've had a lot of people walking down this pathway in front of us, and that was the Collins Center, as well as the other one, the other name escapes me right now. A lot of that information is already out there, but what I'd like to do is meet sometime after town meeting, and have everyone give everyone the homework of reading that guidance. I'll resend it again, the state guidance for this committee, and it really gives you a clear understanding of how the best practices of how to develop a capital improvement program and what information should be in there. I think the information is already out there. It's probably not 100% complete, and it's not in one spot, but we should be able to gather that information so we can develop the plan, ask departments for their capital needs for the next fiscal year, and get that into the Board of Selectmen by October is the goal. So unless anyone thinks otherwise, we'll just wait till maybe late July or early August to reconvene and take our steps there. Go ahead, Fred.
The one thing I was going to suggest, in addition to capital needs, if we could get something from the department heads for facilities maintenance, just in noticing when the chief had, showing us some pictures of paint that needed to be done. I wouldn't consider that to be quote unquote a capital project, but I would consider that to be an ongoing, maintenance need that would fall under facilities.
Yeah.
And, it's going to cost money no matter what. Where does he get the money out of his budget? Or does it come from us with our budget? But to have some sort of a form, that each department head would perhaps go for ongoing maintenance, or this is what I consider to be next year's maintenance costs and what needs to be done, and project out maybe on a 3 to 5 year period, not necessarily, again, capital projects, but maintenance projects.
Fred, that should be going through the facilities manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
the rest of the
yeah
committee.
we're looking at all the buildings.
Bob has an active review program going on, and maybe what we do is we start doing more frequent summaries than annual, so that it's open and present in our minds.
Yes.
All right. So does anybody else have anything before we sign off for until after town meeting? We're hoping that town meeting is in June.
I wanted to add to what you were saying, Dave. I think you brought up a great idea of this department or this committee taking ownership of some of these projects. And I think we should probably do it with project meetings. We should have our thumb on the pulse of these projects, where we're either invited to the project meetings, or as a group we bring the architect in, probably the GC in periodically, no further than every other week on any project, and we have those type of project meetings. I don't know if anybody can commit time to being a clerk of the works to any given project. I don't even know if that's going to be doable, because we all have different disciplines. So I think we can achieve a lot with project meetings. So maybe start there, and then if we have to grow from there, we can do that also. But I think you bring up a really good point. Something that needs to be addressed, that these projects need to have ownership from the city.
Yeah.
And this committee.
Yeah. Part of that communication was, in terms of capital projects, was to request our involvement, at the very least, being, a communication being presented to someone on this committee at the very beginning, saying, okay, town meeting approved capital article A. Obviously things start working, and then, at the very least, let someone on this committee know that step one of that capital article has started. We sent out bids, or in step two, we received the bids. That way, that starts the questions. That person can bring it back here and say, hey, they got bids. I don't know what this means, but, if anybody wants to take a look at it. And, I think, not, like I said, not to be a thorn in the side, but definitely be another set of eyes to really, bring these projects to a level where hopefully we don't have those project issues in the future.
Right.
All right. So I don't see any need to vote to meet prior to town meeting unless anyone disagrees. And then that hopefully that's the end of June, and then we have July. Is everybody amenable to meeting? I don't think on a weekly basis, but sometime in August.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, with me.
All right. So let's go ahead and set it now, just so we have it on the calendar. There we go. Hold on, I don't have a count. So August, we have Thursday nights, 6, 13, 20, or 27. 27 is the Thursday before Labor Day weekend. So
That's going to be back to school time too. That might be quite a few folks busy running around.
So yeah, 20 is sometimes that's a big vacation week right before school. So 6 or 13, the first or second full week in August. We'll go for the if everybody's okay. We'll go for the 6th, and
the 13th works better for me.
okay, 13th. Does that not work for anybody? Same time or different time?
Hopefully the state.
Oh, you're breaking up there. Does anybody need a different time than 5:30? Okay, so 8, 6, 20 at 5:30, and yeah, so that will give
6 or 8:13.
8:13. You're right. 8:13. All right. So I'll go ahead and resend that the state guidance. And at some point, I'll have a correspondence going out to department heads, and I'll CC everybody on that. So it will. I'm a person of a few words. I think few words are better. So I'm trying to really boil down a lot of information into 3 small chunks to this department heads to make it clear, concise, and not to put more work on their shoulders. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:04.
Motion.
Mr. Small, make that
Second,
motion.
Dan.
Small,
Second, Dan Salvucci.
roll call. Preston,
Yes.
David, yes. Fred,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Frank,
Yep.
and Bob.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see
Stay
you
well.
in
Have a
June.
great night.
All right.
Have a good
thank you.
summer, everyone.